All right, welcome. This is going to be a rules video for Pax Pamini. This is my 18 card version of Pax Pamir 2nd edition. A couple things to get out of the way right away. Number one is I say 18 cards, and yes, it's playable at 18 cards. Here's the base 18. I'm going to strongly recommend that you play with the, I think I call them the bonus cards. These are just for tracking things like your money and the favored suit. Otherwise, there's kind of either you have to remember certain things or there's kind of weird ways to track certain things if you're playing with just the base 18. So yes, playable at 18 cards, but I recommend playing with these extra cards, and that's how I'm going to teach you. The other thing is, you can see I have a helper here. This is Peanut Butter, and there is just no way that he's going to let me do this video without him in his favorite spot. So we're just going to let it happen, and he's going to help us. Okay, I'm going to loosely follow the rule book just to make sure that I get a good teach-in. I want to make sure that you're able to learn the game just from this video, so I want to cover everything, and I don't want to get lost, so we're just going to go through the rulebook, and I'll move as quickly as I can, try not to dwell on things. Thematically, it's the same setting as Pax Pamir, so we're going to play as, so the two players, so this is a two-player game, TBD on if we're going to get a solo mode developed. I'm optimistic we will, but right now it's a two-player game. The players assume the role of 19th century Afghan leaders. And what you're doing is you're kind of manipulating the political and economic state of things by aligning yourself with one of the three coalitions or one of the three factions that are coming in and trying to, I guess, seize control of this territory in Afghanistan. So you're always going to be loyal to someone. You're going to be loyal to either the Afghan coalition, the British, or the Russians. Now, that does not mean you're not playing as the Afghans, the British, or the Russians. You're like a tribal leader, and you are aligning yourself with one of these coalitions to basically further your own cause. So you have your own agenda, but you're also manipulating these other coalitions to get your agenda done. You may or may not even change your loyalty during the game. So very interesting game, Pax Pamir, and Pax Pamini tries to replicate that. You win the game by getting the most points, and that's the most teaser I'm going to give you, because I'm going to go kind of through the rulebook in order here. And what we're going to do first is I'm going to show you around the cards. These are the court cards. There's 18 of them. This is also the base game. Try to get it in the light here. These have a number of different elements on them. Up here on the left, that purple crown there, that's the card's suit. There are 4 suits. There's, I believe these are political, economic, military, and intelligence. Every card has a suit. Every card also has a rank, which is the number of stars below the suit icon. In this game, there's only rank 1 or 2 cards. In the big game, I think there's rank 3 cards too. Up here is the region that the card is originally played into. You can move cards, but I'll get to that. So there's 4 different regions. Each card has to be played in the appropriate region. These are the impact icons. These are things that you might have something that you need to resolve right away when the card is played, and also they represent game pieces that are out on the abstracted board. So like when this card is in play, there's a tribe in Kandahar or wherever the card is. When this card is in play, there's a British road in Persia, and so on. This one has 2 tribes and an army. Here is the card's name. There's always some flavor text, courtesy of Mr. Cole Worley. I believe this is all historically accurate. Very interesting stuff if you take the time to read it. Here is a special action. Some cards have these, some cards don't. These are just always in play. And here are the actions that the card opens up for you. So when this card is in play, I have access to a rank 2 combat action, and I have a gift in play. Likewise here I have a rank 1 move action, a betray action, and a rank 1 combat action. I believe that's everything with the cards. Oh no, a couple more things. If you're playing with these tracking cards, you can ignore, there's the suit icons at the bottom, if I can get my camera to focus properly. Like there's a military icon there at the bottom. Here there's a intelligence icon. Just ignore those if you're playing with these, because those are to track the favorite suit if you're not playing with these extra tracking cards. What you should pay attention to still though is if there's a colored band across the bottom, that means it's eligible to be a prize if you would betray that card, basically killing it with a spy. You get to take that card, or you have the option to take that card and tuck it under your loyalty dial and keep this as an Afghan prize. So there's cards that are prizes for no one, and there's cards that are prizes for each of the different factions. Okay, let's go through the bonus cards quick. This is your loyalty dial. Or I'm sorry, that's wrong. This is the favored suit card. Players have their own loyalty dial, which are these. You would rotate these to the appropriate faction that you are loyal to. So each player gets one of those. This is a point tracking card. There's a blue player and a red player. This is money tracking, or rupees, and here are your region cards. These will set out, and I'll go through setup here in a minute. These we will set out to form the abstracted map, and then these are the ruler token cards. You give this to the person who rules a given region. So I'm just going to set up for the blue player because it's going to be hard to get everything in frame, and peanut butter is taking up the space where the market would go anyway. So each player grabs a loyalty dial. I would set the favored suit marker out in the middle. It starts on politics. And then somewhere in your player area, you would put your money tracking and your point tracking, and you put the money tracking card, the rupee tracking card below the point tracking card. So set this to 0 because you start out with 0 points and you start out with 4 rupees. So you would set that out in your player area, something like that, and just move this up and down to track money, and then rotate this or flip it if you need to get more points than that. So each player would set that up. This is the red player's cards. And then you would set out above, kind of north of your player area where you're keeping your loyalty dial. This is how I like to set it up. You would set up your 4 regions. So it goes Persia, Transcaspia, Kabul, and Kandahar. And I would set them up like this. And we're going to be playing cards into these columns. So this loyalty dial would probably be more in the center. So we'll pretend the blue player is over here, the red player is over there somewhere, and this is the center. And we're just not seeing the red player's area here. We're going to take our 4 leader or ruler token cards. I'm going to put them right there in between the 2 tableaus, and then we would probably see like the left edge of the other player's tableau there. And I'll put my points right here. And this is something like what your tableau will look like. Okay, then we do an initial draft. So we'll shuffle up the court cards. Each player is dealt 4 cards. You're going to keep 2 of them. This is going to be the starting market deck. For round 1, you put it, so we would put it further up here to make room for our columns of cards that are going to be built out, but it's going to be hard to get it in frame, and my cat is taking that spot. So pretend this market is further north than that. You orient the deck so that whatever round we're on is oriented on top. So we're starting on round 1. For round 2, at setup of round 2, we would put it like so, and so on. For round number 1 and for round number 1 only, we're going to discard. We're going to start a discard pile over here. Discard the top card face down so nobody knows which card has been discarded. And then you both secretly look at your hands and you keep 2 of your cards. I don't want to be tied down, so I'm going to put these Patriots face down right here, and I'm going to keep these 2 cards. I'm going to keep them secret for now. My opponent would choose 2 cards and put them with my 2 unchosen cards. They have kept their 2 cards. So the 4 cards we didn't choose get shuffled up face down, and these are actually the starting market. So you deal out 4 cards for the starting market. And cool. So yeah, just remember, this is way too close to my tableau. I have no room for cards. That would all be further up than that. All right, let's keep moving here. All right, I didn't talk through the 4 suits in detail, but that's okay. We'll get to that. For now, just know that the suit is going to matter for a few different reasons. One suit is always favored, so the suit that is on top is the one that's currently favored. And that's going to be important for taking free actions. You get to take actions for free that are of the same suit as the favored suit. But we'll go over that in more detail later. Your court. So I'm going to move this market up for now, out of the way, so I can explain what your court is. As we play the game, you're going to be playing cards out into the different regions. And this is wrong. This guy goes in Transcaspia, and this the nomads here go into Kabul. So when you initially play the card, it goes into the appropriate region. And probably a good time to go through maybe the hardest part of the game to wrap your head around, and even for players coming from Pax Pamir, there's no physical map in the game. So in Pax Pamir, we would play this out and we would put 2 roads down. Same with this one, we would put 2 roads on the map, just blocks on the map. Here we would put an army in Kabul, which is a vertical block. Here, we don't have a map, we don't have game pieces, we just have cards. So what happens is your cards are in 2 places at once. They are in your court, which in Pax Pamir, you don't have these regions here. You just have like a player board, and then the cards above it are in your court, and they're sort of, for the most part, detached from the board after you place those pieces out. So you'd play this, you place the pieces out, and then this card, for all intents and purposes, forgets about the game pieces and just cares about what's going on with the card and with the court and with spies and stuff. Here, they are obviously linked. These 2 road icons, we can't just grab them off the card, so they're there. And so your card is both in your court, basically in your tableau or your player area, and they are also in the specific region that as designated by the column that they're in. So these 2 roads are in Kabul. This card has a spy on it. Spies are different. I'll go through that. But there's actually nothing in Transcaspia here, but I have 2 roads in Kabul. If my opponent would play, let's say this card, into Kabul, even though it's over here in their tableau, I need to be paying attention because now this card and its blocks and tribes are sharing space on the abstracted map with my cards. So my 2 roads in Kabul are in the same sort of imaginary geographical space as my opponent's army. And so my opponent's army could attack my 2 roads. It wouldn't be successful. They would need another army to do anything to this card. But so just be aware of what your opponent's doing. It's really important to pay attention to what they're putting or what they're planning to put in the regions, because you share that same sort of imaginary geographical space. Okay, that will hopefully make more sense as we go through the different actions. A few concepts that we are going to talk through before we get to the actions, and once we get through the actions, then we're kind of off to the races. So I went through the map. Your hand, right now, this is my hand. I suggest playing with open hands. You can play it either way. I like playing with open hands because I don't like memory as a mechanic, but you can do it either way, just like Big Pamir. You can choose how you want to do it. So right here is my hand of cards. Up here is my court. So when cards refer to like your hand or your court, or effects refer to that, just know that. tracking rupees on market cards. So if you remember the market out here, we're going to be placing rupees on these cards, and obviously we don't have any coins. So the way we're going to do that is there are 7 different orientations of the card. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and well, I guess there's 8 orientations. Straight up, it means there's no money on it. This means there's 1 money, 2, and so on. When you take a card that has money on it, you immediately gain that money. So I would adjust this. And so say this had 1 rupee on it. I would take that, put it into my court, just kind of put it into my hand, I'm sorry. Just vertical, it doesn't matter at that point, and then I would increase my rupee count by 1. All right. Discarding cards for rupees, this is something new in the shrink version. Cards in my hand, I can, as I'm taking literally any action in the game that costs money, I can discard a card from my hand or multiple cards in my hand. I could discard both of these if I wanted, or all of my cards, to gain 1 rupee towards the cost of doing that action per card I discarded. So doing that would gain me 2 rupees, and yeah, that way you're never left with like a dead hand. You can always do something with cards. Okay, rank and privilege, already kind of explained. Cards with 1 star and 2 star. This is a rank 1 card. All of its relevant actions that care about rank are also rank 1. Like this is a rank 1 move action. If you ever see 2 flags, that means it's on a 2-star card, and this is a rank 2 move action. You actually get 2 movement points here. Same with the tax action. This is on a rank 2 card, but the image helps you remember because there's 2 rupees there. If it was a rank 1 tax action, there would just be 1 rupee there. Okay. Loyalty and influence. So this is where Big Pax Pamir really got me confused when I was trying to learn it, so I'll do my best here. You're always loyal to one of the factions. So we are loyal to the British right now. And during the game, you have the potential to change your allegiance to a different faction. But let's just say we're British right now. Since I'm loyal to the British, unless I want to change factions, I can only play British or red or pink, I guess. I can only play red patriots. So some of these cards are neutral. They don't have a color or a faction, a coalition icon here. So these are all what I call neutral cards. The rest of them are patriots, and patriots themselves are loyal to one of the factions. So if I'm loyal to the British and I play a British patriot, that's fine. That's kind of what they're there for. If I'm loyal to the British and I play a Russian patriot, then that would trigger me changing loyalty to Russian. But there's a bit more going on that can be fairly penalizing depending on what sort of position you're in and if you can afford it. So yeah, you're always loyal to a faction, and it's going to matter whether you take a prize of a different faction or if you play a patriot of a different faction. Influence. I will go through influence more when we go through dominance checks, so I'm going to wait on that. As a teaser, I'm just looking at the rulebook here. Your total influence is the sum of 1. So it's basically the number of icons you have that equal your faction. So that your loyalty card actually counts for 1. So here's 1 icon, that's 1. So it's 1 plus the number of patriots in your court. So if we had 1 here, that's 2. And then the number of prizes you have. So if we had this as a prize, we had a British prize, that's an additional influence point. And then any gifts. Let me find a gift. Any gifts out in your court, this counts for 1 influence. Doesn't matter who you're loyal to. And then you can also, this is a little bit confusing, but we'll get to it. You can also buy, no, you can't buy temporary influence. I'm going to confuse you if I say that. I'm going to ignore the build action for now. We will move on. Okay, steps for changing loyalty. I'm going to come back to that because this is a whole thing in Pamini. Just to make sure that it was balanced, I had to add a few, and I will admit, fiddly rules. So somebody remind me to come back to that. For now, we're going to skip it until you understand a little bit more about the game. Ruling a region. If you have at least one tribe in a region and a majority of ruling pieces. So these discs, these cylinders with the crown icon, those are tribes. And so you have to have at least one tribe in the region, and I do. So I would immediately take that ruler card. I'd probably put it right there to remember. And if you have a majority of ruling pieces, which I believe are, yeah, you have to have at least one tribe and a majority of ruling pieces. Tribes and armies are considered ruling pieces. So this army actually counts toward that, but I have to have a minimum of one tribe. So if my opponent had, I don't know, let's say that this was a Transcaspia card. If they had this card in Transcaspia, they would have one tribe and one army. That's two ruling pieces. Not good enough to take the ruler card from me because I have three ruling pieces. If it's a tie, it just gets returned to the stack and no one's the ruler. Ruling is going to be important for bribes later. Okay, general rules, negotiation. I don't need to go through that. There's not really negotiation. You can kind of say, don't do this to me and I won't do that to you, but you can see how far that gets you. Nothing is necessarily binding. You can't like exchange money or anything. You have to do it within the confines of the game. Basically, the only thing that you can, within the rules of the game, negotiate with is you can waive a bribe action if you so choose. Like if I'm the ruler of Transcaspia, my opponent wants to play a card in Transcaspia, I can waive that bribe if I want, and that can be kind of a negotiation tool. It's just not as prevalent in a two-player game as it is in a big game, but you can get creative. Okay, access to actions. You always have access to the two core actions, which are purchase and play. You can do those at any time, as long as you have a card and the means to buy a card. Well, actually, you can always purchase a card. But then your tableau, cards in your court, not your hand, but cards in your court are going to open up new actions for you. So this card is in my court. Now I have access to this betray action. This card's in my court. Now I have access to these two actions, the tax action and the move action. So your tableau is going to open up what actions you can take. Okay, discarding a card in your court. Any spies on the card are lost. I didn't go through this yet, but you can see there's a spy icon. There's a blue one here and a red one here. If there's a spy on the card, let's say there's a blue spy on it, you're actually going to rotate the card 90 degrees left to indicate there's a blue spy on it. If this card gets discarded for whatever reason, that spy is gone. So make sure you know where your spies are. And I'm going to see if I can figure out what page I was on. Oh yes, leveraged. Whenever you play a card with the leveraged icon, you gain 2 rupees. If you would have to discard this card, other than, I believe, when you clear the board after a successful dominance check, I think that's the one exception, but almost always, if this card was in your court and you have to discard it, then you have to pay those 2 rupees back. And if you can't, you have to discard a card, I think, from your hand. Yeah, you must discard 1 card from your hand or court, not including this card, if you can't pay it back. Okay? All right. Now we're getting to the good stuff here. Here's the sequence of play. So first you start with cleanup. If you have more cards than 3 plus the sum of purple cards on cards in your court. Here's a purple card. These are political cards. You can have 3 cards in your court just automatically. So let's say here's our game state. We'll pretend we are Afghan. Here we're fine, but during the cleanup at the start of your turn, if I would have, say, well, actually, this is a bad example because I put out 2 purple cards. Let's go with something else here. These are all Transcaspia cards, which is hard, but let's say I have these 3 Transcaspia cards in this column, and I am Russian, apparently. None of these are purple cards. They're not going to add any to the size of my court. So the size limit of your court is always 3. And so if I had a 4th card, wow, these are all Transcaspia. If I had a 4th card in this column or in my tableau at all, I would have to choose one to discard at the start of my turn during the cleanup phase because I have more than 3. Now, this is one thing that purple cards are good for, and they can be very powerful, so you want to keep an eye on them. For every purple star you have in your tableau, you get to increase that limit by 1. So right now, my tableau size limit would be actually 5. So 3 for the natural size limit, and then 4, 5. Purple cards are good. The Afghans, just spoiler alert, have a lot of the purple cards. Okay. Second, if you have more cards in your hand than 2 plus the number of blue stars in your court. So natural hand limit is 2. If I would have 3 cards in my hand and let's say nothing in my court or whatever, or no blue cards in my court, then I would have to discard a card from my hand, or I would have to discard down to my hand size, which is a natural 2. However, let's say I have this card in my court. This adds to your hand size limit. So my hand size limit here would be 4. Natural 2 plus 1, 2. Okay. And then you would fill in the market at the start of cleanup with any empty spaces. So here's the market, let's say. 4 cards in the market. On your opponent's turn, they bought this card and they bought this card. Well, at the start of your turn, you slide this down and then you fill in the empty spaces so that there's 4 cards again. If there's money on a card, that slides with it. It stays on the card until it's purchased or until it's discarded after a dominance check. Okay. Game end and victory. The game can end in 2 ways. If after a dominance check, one player leads the other by at least 4 points, that player wins. Otherwise, the final dominance check, the 4th one, is worth double points. And after that, you just tally up your points, and whoever has the most points wins if nobody won by the mercy rule by then. I will say many of the games don't go the full 4 dominance checks. Okay, the 2 core actions are purchase and play. Purchase is probably the easiest, so we'll do that first. When you purchase a card, there's a graduated cost based on its column. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3. So based on the space it's in, that's the cost in rupees that you have to pay. So what you would do is, we'll say that's not in our hand. Those are all in the deck there. Okay. This card you can just take without paying any money. So you just take that into your hand. That's easy enough. If it had money on it, so this is, 2 rotations, 1, 2, that has 2 rupees on it. Take that card, straighten it up, and then take the 2 money over here. Otherwise, if you want to take something from a different column, you have to pay the cost. So this is cost of 1. You got to pay the cost first. So that's, I spent the 1 money, and then you actually put the money, the rupee, you put 1 rupee on each card to the left of it. So we bought this card. So we put our 1 money right here. If this was already like this, we would just add to it. So for example, if we took this card, we would have to spend 0, 1, 2, 3. We'd have to spend 3 money. So we would adjust this, and then we would put 1 money on each of these cards, and then we get to take that card into our hand. One important rule is you cannot take a card that you have put money on this turn. So if we were to do that and take this card, all of these are disqualified from us taking it this turn. If there is an empty space, and this is a change from Big Pax Pamir, the economy is a little bit different. If there's an empty space, you act as if you put that money on the card. So you still pay the money. So let's say this card costs 3 and we have 3 rupees. Okay, we want to take it anyway. We're going to spend the 3 rupees and go 1, pretend we put 1 here, and 3, and we get to take the card. That money that we put here kind of just disappears, but we're going to re-up and introduce more money into the economy after every dominance check. So that's a change from Pax Pamir second edition. Pax Pamir is, for the most part, a closed economy game other than the leveraged mechanism. And this is a little different. Money can flow in and out of it a little bit. Okay, that's the purchase action. You can actually do the purchase action for dominance check cards. And I'm just going to introduce the concept of the dominance check. So say it's cleanup and we had, let's say just 2 cards left in the deck and all the cards in the market were purchased except for 1. So during cleanup at the start of my turn, I would slide that down. I'd fill in the market and I can't fill up to 4 cards. There's actually an empty space here. The leftmost empty space is there's an invisible dominance check card here. So in the big game, there's an actual card, but for obviously the restrictions of this game, we're just going to pretend there's one here. And that card can be purchased like any other card. So this is in the cost 3 slot, 0, 1, 2, 3. So we could purchase this for 3 rupees on our turn. And then, if after my turn I bought those 2 cards, this would slide down. That dominance check card is in the 1 cost slot for my opponent. And there's nothing over here. If on your turn the last card in the market goes away, then after that, the dominance check card triggers automatically after your turn. It sort of falls off the end of the market. Okay, I will get to dominance checks later. Military suit cards. So when the military suit is the favored suit, there's a helpful reminder here. All the costs are doubled. So 0, 2, 4, 6. Okay. Play. Play is the other core action. Everybody look at my cat. Okay. Play is the other core action. You can always play a card if you have one and you're capable. I guess there's a few restrictions on it, but the purchase and play actions are always available to you. Playing a card. You just take it from your hand and place it in your court. You put it in the appropriate region. So this is a Kabul card. I have to put it in Kabul, at least initially. And then you resolve any relevant impact icons. One thing I should mention is before you play a card that has a gift on it, there's a reminder here that's a cost 2. So to play this card, this is the only type of card that's like that, a card with the gift action here. It's required for you to play this card that you have to pay 2 rupees. So that's the only time you have to pay money to play a card. Well, okay, other than bribes, but we'll get to bribes. But just for your own sake, if you're going to play this card, it's always cost 2. But these are nice because they count both as 1 influence and also as 1 disc. So they help in both a successful and an unsuccessful check. Okay, back to the play action. Oh yeah, we'll get to bribes right away. So if my opponent has the ruler token of Transcaspia, and I want to play this card into Transcaspia, I have to pay them a bribe equal to the number of tribes they have in that region before I'm allowed to play that card. Like I said earlier, they have the option to waive that bribe, but likely as not, that's not going to happen. So you'll have to end up paying money if they are the ruler, and that payment goes directly to them. Other payments, I should say this and stress this, other payments like gifts and build actions and betray actions. Betray actions cost money as well. If I can get that zoomed in. Those costs are paid to the market, and they're paid to the right side of the market. So if I'm going to play, say, that gift card out, before I play it out, I have to pay the 2 money for the gift, and there's 4 cards in the market. I would start on the right side of the market, and I would pay 1 money all the way down the left for the cards that are there. If there's an empty space, same deal as before. You pretend you paid on that space and you reduce your rupees accordingly, but you don't actually put anything there. And then if you still have more to put out, you start back on the right side. So I would start here. Okay, now I'm done. Okay. If the card is a patriot that doesn't match your current loyalty, say we are British. And we want to play this Russian guy out. We're free to do that, but now we have just changed to a British loyalty. And I will go through changing loyalties. We're going to flip back to that, like we talked about. All right. Impact icons. You resolve any that need to be resolved right away. So let's go through. This is a favored suit icon. This just means after I play this out, the favored suit changes to economic. And so like this one changes the favored suit to intelligence. Some cards have these, some cards don't. Military, that can be good or bad depending on whether you want to buy cards because it makes the market more expensive, if you recall. Otherwise, we have roads. These are game pieces that are sort of on the board. We have spies. And we have tribes. I explained, trying to find one, gosh, I'm blanking on the term for this. The money lending icon. What is that? Leveraged. The leveraged icon. You can play this out. You don't have to pay any money to play it out, but you have to take the 2 rupees after playing it out. And then if your opponent were to betray this card or kill it in a combat and you have to discard it, or if you just discard it yourself, you have to pay that money back right away. But we talked through that. So when you play a spy, this is where it gets a little hairy. When you play a spy into its designated region, when you play a card with a spy on it, first I'm going to change it to economic, which it was already. Then this spy gets to go on a card that's in Transcaspia. Now you can put your own spy on the card you just played. We could put it on another Transcaspia card if I had one. Let's find one. We're all hiding out together. So I put this card into Transcaspia. I could put that spy right here if I wanted on my own card. Much of the time you might find yourself wanting, though, to put the spy on your opponent's card. So if my opponent has a card in Transcaspia in their tableau, you can drop that spy onto their card. So you would rotate their card like that. Okay, so just to reiterate, the spy icon, you resolve that right away, you drop a spy somewhere. Those are the only pieces in the game that are independent of the cards. So this spy might move from here to here. It lives on or dies on its own, and it's independent of the cards. Every other of these icons that are a game piece, so the roads, the tribes, and the armies, those are considered on the board, and those are in the same geographical space as your opponent in that region. Okay. And card-based actions. So I touched on this, but we'll go through bonus actions first. Bonus actions, or I just end up calling them free actions. You can take, during your turn, you have 2 actions. Okay, and you can spend that doing whatever you want as long as you can do it. The exception to that rule is you get free actions if the card that the action is sitting on matches the favorite suit. So this card is an economic card. And so all of my economic cards on my turn, including this one, I can do an action from that card for free. Now you can only do 1 action from each card during your turn. So I couldn't, move and then combat from this card. I would probably move using this card's action and then do combat with this action, or move from here and combat from there. But since economic is the favorite suit, I could say move using this action, combat using this action, but I can still do my free actions. You can do it in any order. And I can do 1 free action from each card. So I could do a betray from this card, let's say, and then I could do a tax action from this card. Okay. Hostage actions. This is one of the benefits of having your spy on an opponent's card. So let's say our opponent has a spy. There's a red spy and we're blue. So they have a red spy on this card in our court. They can hold this card hostage. Similar to the concept of ruling a region, they sort of rule this card now. I can only use this card's action if I pay a bribe of 1 rupee to my opponent. So I can use this tax action, or I could use this move action, but I'd have to pay my opponent money as before. And I believe, just like the other case of the region rulers, they can choose to waive that bribe. Yes, they can choose to waive that bribe. So if you can sweet talk them into that, that is an option. Okay, the tax action, you get to take money equal to the action's rank. So here's a rank 1 tax action, just the 1 rupee picture. Here's a rank 2 tax action. Let's say we took this action. You take money from the market, which means you unrotate. You rotate counterclockwise the card a number of rotations to equal to the rank of the action. You can take money from any card in the market or multiple cards, or if you are the ruler of a region, let's say we rule this region. If you're the ruler of the region, if your opponent has at least 1 court card associated with that region, so we're talking in the name. So this is Transcaspia. If our opponent, say our opponent had this card in Transcaspia, as long as they have 1 court card that has the same name as the region that you rule, you are allowed to actually take money from them instead of the market. Or you could do 1 and 1. You could take 1 from your opponent, you could take 1 from the market. Tax shelters. This is where economic cards come into play. So the yellow cards. For every yellow star you have in your tableau, that is protection from 1, that's 1 tax shelter for each yellow star. Or gold stars, I guess they are. Only rupees you hold in excess of your tax action can be taxed. So our first, we're guaranteed that 3 rupees are untaxable. It's like they don't see it. But if I have a 4th rupee, which I do, they could tax that one and get me down to 3, but they have to stop there. Okay, the build action, let's find one of those. This is one that significantly changed for this game. In the big game, the build action allows you to actually put pieces out on the board. Here, we don't have that option. So what the build action does is it is sort of a, it's a last minute effort to gain invisible blocks. So for 3 rupees, this triggers, let me start over. When a dominance check triggers, before you resolve the check and dole out points, which we'll get to, you stop and you ask if anybody wants to do any build actions. And I think the current player chooses to take 1, and then the other player can choose to take 1, and if the current player wants to take another one, they can, and you go back and forth until everybody passes. What the build action is you can pay 3, 6, or 9 rupees for 1, 2, or 3 temporary blocks. These are invisible blocks, and they just add to your block count when you're deciding whether the check was successful or not. So this might be decisive. If you're just 1 or 2 blocks away from making a successful check and you want a successful check, you would get those invisible blocks. Now you have to place blocks, obviously, of your faction. So if I'm British, those would count as British blocks. And worth mentioning too, because I don't think I mentioned this, even though these are not colored British, because these are all neutral cards, right? These aren't Patriots. They don't have the pink coloring here. These are considered, all of the blocks that are out here, either armies or roads, are considered whatever faction you are. So those are 2 British armies. Those are 2 British roads. Those are 2 British roads. Spies don't really care about allegiances. Okay, the move action. Moving spies and moving armies are a little bit different. Moving spies is for every rank of the move, you can move the spy one card. When the spies go left to right, they move from bottom to top in the column, and they try to move right, but if there's remaining cards in that column, they have to go up, and then they start at the bottom of the next column. So let's just say, here, let's say we have a spy here, and we take this rank 2 move action. Where I really want to get to is like here, let's say. But this turn, or at least with my rank 2 move action, I can move it 1, and it starts out at the bottom of the column because I'm moving right, and then 2. And that's the end of that action. Now, if I wanted, I could use this action then as my second action for the turn to move it here. But you can't start top to bottom if you're going from left to right. Now, if you're going right to left, you do the reverse. So you start bottom to top. So this spy here, its first move would be here, its next move would be here, and so on. Spies actually don't care about regions. They only really care about the cards that are out, your court cards. Because what's interesting about spies is they can actually move to your opponent's tableau. And so consider your tableau is like linked in an imaginary circle here. If I moved this spy that direction towards my opponent, it would move to their first column, which is Kandahar over here. So if they had, cool, there's 2 Kandahar cards here. They're different loyalties. We'll ignore that for a second. But say we have a spy here. We want to move it left. If you're going left, you start from top to bottom. So the first move would be here. If we wanted to, say it was a rank 2 action, we could then move it here. And it could continue that direction if we wanted it to sort of move through their tableau. Now your court is also linked going this direction, even though it has to wrap all the way around. So I could move this spy, since there's no cards in Kandahar, because it only cares about the cards. It doesn't care if there's an empty region or whatever. It's just like, what's my next card I'm going to? So if I would have a spy here, I would move it to the right. It would loop all the way back around, and it would start at the bottom of my opponent's Persia column, and then it would work through like that. Okay, that's confusing enough. Moving armies is more fun yet. The only cards that you can move from place to place are cards that have armies on them. Roads, once built, can't be moved. Tribes, once built, can't be moved. Or if the card is like, there's some cards in here like this one that just have spies on it. There's no game pieces associated with this card, so this card is going to live its days out in Transcaspia where you place it. However, if the card has an army on it, it's eligible to be moved. So even though this card has a little bit of everything, it's got a tribe, it had a spy, and that spy is probably somewhere else by now. You can move this card because it has an army on it. You can move, so every rank of the move action you take, so let's say we take a rank 2 move action, that means we have 2 movement points to spend, and it means we can move 1 army. So you look at how many armies are on the card. This is only the 1 army. You can move, for every movement point, you can move 1 army, 1 region. So if this was a rank 2 move action, we could move this army, let's say here, and then here. Okay, and whichever column whichever region it ends up in, you get to choose whether to put it at the top or bottom of that column. So let's say we move this guy over here. Well, I want him at the bottom. He's going to push everybody up. Or I just want him at the top. He's going to go up here on the top. You can't insert it into the middle. That new card, once it's moved into a new column, has to go on the bottom or the top of that column. And order matters, as you know, because we went through the spies, and the spies move from card to card. So you'll have to think about that. One restriction on the movement. Well, a couple of restrictions. You need, let me stop for a second. I want to explain this really quick. I'll get back to what I was going to, but there's 2 armies on this card. That means it would take 2 movement points to move this card 1 region. So if this card was in this column, we could use our move action to like move it here. But that's it, because we burned both of those movement points to move those 2 armies. Okay. It doesn't really matter what else is on the card. So tribes, they just kind of tag along. The big restriction on moving armies is you need enough of a road presence to be able to move the army. So you need 1 road for every army that you're moving, and the roads can be combined between the 2 regions that are adjacent. So if I'm moving, let's say from Kabul, I want to move this guy from Kabul to Transcaspia. I need at least 1 road in either Kabul or Transcaspia. But a better example might be, let's find a card with one. Find a couple cards with one road. There's one. There's one. Okay, this is a bad example because those cards are not in the right place, but let's, for the sake of this example, let's just say we take this rank 2 move action, and now let's do this instead. We're going to take this rank 1 move action, and we want to move, well, we can't do that. We need 2 movement, sorry. We want to move this guy into this column. Well, do we have enough of a road presence is one of the questions you have to ask, because I have 2 armies that are going to move here. Well, in Kabul we have the 1 road, and we're moving here, and so we can check roads in this column. And so in Transcaspia we also have a road. So that's 2 roads. That's good enough for our 2 armies, and so we can move that here. And that's true for every movement. So we happen to have roads over here too, but if that card wasn't there, we couldn't move into here because there's not enough roads. If both of these cards were in Kabul, that works too. You don't have to combine it with the place that you're going. So if I have 2 roads in Kabul, I can move either direction. But if this card was here, I actually couldn't move over to Kandahar because I only have the 1 road here. So you need to have combined number of roads between where you are and where you're going to move all of the armies on the card. Phew. Okay. I think we're done with that. That's one of the more confusing ones. So we'll go with the betray action. If you have a betray action in your court, you can spend 2 rupees to betray a card that you have a spy on. So let's say we have a blue spy, in Persia on this card in our opponent's court. We can spend 2 rupees. We pay that to the right side of the market, if you recall, and we can betray this card, which means we basically kill this card and it goes into the discard pile. So it's a way to get rid of cards in your opponent's court. However, if the card that you betray has a prize at the bottom, you have the option to take that prize. So let's say we betrayed that card. We can keep that as a prize. That counts as an influence point if we're scoring up a successful dominance check. Okay, you actually are allowed to take prizes of not your coalition. So let's say we betrayed this card. You can do that, but then you got to change your loyalty. And so we'll go through that process. What else with the betray action? I think that's it. Okay, the battle action. That is these little fireworks here. That's a rank 2 battle action. That's how you get rid of your opponent's game pieces. So by game pieces, I mean the pieces that they act as if they're on the abstracted map. So that's tribes, roads, and armies. Well, actually, you can battle with spies too. Don't let me forget to talk about that. So let's do army battles first, or region battles. I think I call them in the rulebook. You get to remove. This is another way to get rid of cards in your opponent's court. And my army, let's say I was over here in Persia where it belongs. My 2 armies are, it's as if they are in the same region as my opponent. So let's say my opponent is, let's say we are Afghan. our opponent is British and they have this road in Persia. So it's not in our court, but it's in their Persia column. We can do a combat action against this card, and you just have to be able to defeat the sum of the total game pieces on the card. So armies, tribes, and roads. So like this one here. This has the 2 game pieces. We would need at least 2 armies to be able to defeat this card if that was in our opponent's tableau. So let's just do an example here quick. Let's do this one. We're in Persia. Our opponent has this card in Persia. We take the rank 2 battle action. Heck, we could take a rank 1 battle action and it'd be fine. And we are allowed to remove a number of game pieces equal to the number of armies we have in that region. And that means you could combine cards. So let's just say we also happen to, this card started in Kabul, but we moved it over here. Now we have 3 armies, this one, and this one in Persia. And so we could remove a card that had up to like 3 pieces on it. Or you can actually remove multiple cards. The rank of the battle action is the limit on the number of cards you're allowed to remove. So let's just say, I don't know, somehow, I know these regions are off, but somehow our opponent had these cards in Persia, and so I see 1, 2, 3 game pieces, 2 roads and a tribe that I'm looking to remove. I take this battle action, it's rank 2, so I can remove up to 2 cards. Do I have the firepower to do it? I do, because I have 1, 2, 3 armies that can defeat 1, 2, 3 game pieces. I get to discard both of their cards from their court. You don't have the option when you're taking a battle action to take that card as a prize. That's only for spies. Okay, you can also battle between spies. So I forgot to mention this before. Say our opponent has a spy here and we have a spy here. You can't leave your spy on a card that has an opponent spy, and that makes sense based on the component restriction here, because here's our spy. If I'm moving it over here, let's say I moved to this guy and I move it to here. All right, these are the only 2 out. I want to move it to this card. Well, I have to be able to have an action left that I can take, and I have to be able to take a combat action or a battle action to fight that person's spy. So what that would look like is I take a move action as my first action, let's say, and I move my spy into this card. Immediately, if I want to leave my spy there, I'm forced to combat their spy. And because it's an even match here where I have 1 spy, they have 1 spy, you can just remove their spy with that battle action, and so then that card gets tilted upright. You also lose your spy. So if you, in a spy-to-spy combat, both spies are lost in that battle. Now you can, let's say this is the tableau, and here's my opponent's spy, they're red, and here's my spy, I'm blue. I actually want to get over to this card. If I have a rank 2, let's see, I have this rank 2 move card here. If I have a rank 2 move action, I can actually get through this spy. So I don't want to do combat, but since I can kind of skip over that card, I'm going to go ahead and do it. So here's my rank 2 action. 1 movement, 2 movement. I skipped over that card, and I didn't have to battle them. Okay. All right. We'll go through dominance checks, which is how scoring happens, and then I'll circle back and we'll talk about changing loyalty. Excuse me. I gotta hydrate here. We'll circle back and we'll talk about changing loyalty, and then we will be done. So the dominance checks happen like we talked about. Let's say this is not my tableau anymore, this is the market. And I tried to deal out the 4 cards, and I couldn't. This empty space here is a dominance check card. You can purchase that, and if no one purchases it and it's the only card left in the market at the end of the turn, then it triggers automatically. What happens during a dominance check is, remember, first you have to check if anyone wants to buy any temporary blocks with available build actions. But then after that, you have to decide whether the check was successful or unsuccessful. So a successful check is if one faction or one coalition, one of these three coalitions, has 3 or more blocks than the other person. So let's say, now this isn't the market anymore, this is my tableau. We have 1, 2, 3, and blocks are roads and armies. So let's say this was our tableau. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 blocks. And let's say our opponent, you know, they only had these 2 cards in their tableau, and so they have 1, 2 blocks. I had 5, they had 2, that's 3 more than them. That is a successful check. And you have to have at least 3 blocks. And by that I mean you can actually both be the same loyalty. That's one, I guess, rule that I forgot to mention during battle actions. You can't actually take a battle action against roads and armies. Heck, I think tribes too. Let me check here. I know roads and armies for sure. You can't take a battle action against someone who is of your same loyalty. Yeah, you cannot remove armies, roads, or tribes if your opponent shares your loyalty. Now, that doesn't apply to spies. Spies don't care about your loyalty. You can kill your opponent's spies or betray their cards, even if you're the same loyalty. But in terms of army combat, that is something that is reserved for if you're not the same loyalty. Okay. What you're looking for in a successful check. So we had 3 more blocks than them. Now we're going to check who has the most loyalty with the successful coalition. So if we're separate coalitions and I won and the Afghan coalition, and this guy wouldn't be there, he's Russian, and the Afghan coalition had 3 more blocks and it was a successful check, and my opponent wasn't Afghan, that means that they actually don't participate in getting any of the points, and I would get all of the points. If we are, let's say our opponent was in fact Afghan though, then it becomes a contest of who has the most influence with that faction. And we learned before, influence is 1, so 1 for your loyalty dial, plus any prizes you have. So this would put us at 2, and then any patriots you have, that would be 3, and then any gifts you have, that would be 4. So here's a gift, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 influence, and then we would compare with our opponent. If it's a tie, I believe you just split the points. So the player with the most influence points scores 5 victory points. The player with the second most scores 3. So if we're, like I said, if we're separate loyalties, I'm going to get 5, my opponent gets nothing. But if we're both the same loyalty, whoever has the most influence gets 5 and the other person gets 3. Okay, that's only for a successful check. If it's an unsuccessful check, that means, let's say our opponent had 3 blocks out and we had 5. Well, we're not 3 ahead of them, so the check is actually unsuccessful. Now we don't care about blocks anymore. With an unsuccessful check, we're actually just looking at cylinders. So discs are tribes and spies. So you don't care about the spy icon, because remember, that's detached from the card. What you care about is actually how many spies you have in play. So let's say it looks like this, and, well, let's say this, and I have 1 spy on a card in my opponent's tableau. So that would be 1 for the tribe, 2 for this spy, and then 3 for the spy that's over in my opponent's tableau. So I have 3 discs out. Actually, I would also add my gift. Your gift counts as a cylinder or a disc in the event of an unsuccessful check. So that would be 1, 2, 3, and then I said I had a spy in my opponent's court, that's 4. The player with the most discs in play gets 3 victory points, and the player with the second most discs in play gets 1 victory point. With tracking your points here, these cards only go up to 7. If you would need to go above 7, just start tracking the point differential. So you might just reduce your opponent's points rather than giving you points if necessary. Because all we care about is the lead. We don't care about anything other than that because there's only 2 players. So the point differential is what you care about. Okay. After a dominance check, so let's say